Hey Motive Nation, Nick Pahr here with you again at Spectrum Lanes in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Today I want to go over something that's very vital in our sport, and that is creating an arsenal, especially if you have a maximum amount of equipment that you can bring, maybe say 5 balls like for upcoming junior gold tournament. It gets very, very overwhelming trying to decipher which 5 you're going to bring and making sure that you have the right shapes in your bag as you're about to attack a pattern that maybe you haven't seen before. So I'm going to go over some things of what I like to do and just what's typical for everybody when they're creating an arsenal of, a certain amount of balls. So the best thing to do when you're creating an arsenal, in my opinion, is to start at the middle, because you know that you've got balls that are going to be stronger and balls that are going to be weaker. So a good benchmark ball that you have a lot of confidence in, you know the shape that you're going to see out of it and the shape that you like to see out of it. And when it's wrong, you know that it's probably not the right ball and you can switch to something else. So knowing what shapes you like to see out of a certain ball that's in your bag is very key. So for me, benchmark obviously is a Venom Shock. I'm going to start with the Venom Shock, and that's going to be my centerpiece. I'm going to have probably 2 balls that are stronger and 2 balls that are weaker. They're going to be stronger in different ways. Maybe it's cover stock strength, or maybe it's core strength. Maybe it's how fast it is off the friction versus how slow it is on the friction. You've got to keep all of these different variables in the back of your mind when you're building an arsenal top to bottom. So I'm going to go Venom Shock, and then a step up from that maybe would be a Pride Liberty. It is an asim versus a symmetric, so that asymmetry is going to change how it looks off the end of the pattern compared to the Venom Shot. Venom Shot's going to be a little bit more rounder, more continuous. And if that's maybe a little too smooth and I need a little bit stronger engine, I could go to a Liberty. Yes, the Liberty is a little bit cleaner, a little bit faster off the friction, but I can adjust that with surface. So a step up from a Liberty could be, say, a Jackal Onyx. Now for me personally, I think that's a little too strong, and that pigeonholes me to where I hope there's enough volume out there because it is so strong. So I went with a Ghost because that cover's not too early, and it allows me to have a stronger asim version of a Liberty with a little bit more surface and strength in the core. Another option above my benchmark ball, being the Venom Shock, would probably be a Primal Rage Evolution. So that's a different version of going up in strength like my Pride Liberty, but now I have a pearl and it's symmetric. So instead of the hybrid asim like we have in that Pride Liberty, I've got a pearl symmetric. So those two are very close to each other if I need a different shape when they're transitioning. Those games 2, 3, 4, after the lanes are really starting to transition and give me a little bit more friction. Maybe the Liberty is just too forward down lane because of the asymmetry. Well, then I have a pearl symmetric that I can go to that's going to give me a little bit more length, a little more continuation down lane. And then for the later games, like you're bowling longer formats, you got to have something below that benchmark that is a little bit weaker, a little cleaner, gets down lane easier so you don't see the muddy part of the lane when they're beat up. And that would be a thrill hybrid for me. Clean enough to the fronts, symmetric, so it's going to be continuous, but it's much weaker cover that's going to get me down lane a lot easier and not fight all those landmines in the middle of the lane where maybe somebody carves the lane up from further left than you and you move into it and then it hooks. Well, I got to move even further left, and I need to probably have something that gets down lane far enough and is really controllable, and that would be Max Drill Hybrid for me. It gets very, very overwhelming trying to decipher which 5 you're going to bring and making sure that you have the right shapes in your bag as you're about to attack a pattern that maybe you haven't seen before. And we're going to see how it transitions out here on this pattern. I have no idea what's out there today, so it's kind of like, I'm just getting thrown into the fire, and I'm going to figure out what I need and what I will expect the lanes to transition to in order to know what balls I need for later. So like I said, I'm going to start with a Venom Shock. This is my benchmark. I know a lot of people that say the same thing. I just know what it's supposed to do on the lane. I know what I like to see out of it and when it's right for me. And then if it's not right, I have a pretty good understanding of what I need to change, whether it's a ball, angle, ball speed, stuff like that, in order to match up. So this is just a really good ball for me to start with in order to get a good read on what the pattern is asking for me. So I'm going to throw some shots with this to start. Trying to figure out what the pattern. It's pretty good shape. I was a little up the lane, nice and soft, nothing crazy. Still hooked quite a bit down lane for how much I didn't really try to get after it. So that tells me they're pretty quick coming off the end of the pattern. I would like to have something a little bit slower so I can make sure that I control that back end motion. Venom Shock might be a little quick. I could probably add some surface to it. That would help it slow down and make it a little bit rounder. It might force me a little bit further left compared to that shot, but that's okay, as long as it still gets up the hill with enough energy and goes through the fins. So based off that, I want to look at the Ghost, just because I know that that's going to bleed off a little bit more energy and maybe get a little bit more forward down lane. So let's switch to that. Let's look again, do a little bit further left, and a stronger ball at 8 for Ghost. So that is a little bit too strong, obviously. That still saw play in the mid lane, jumped off it. So that just tells me that that's a little bit too big. There's not enough volume or length. So I'll probably have to go down back to my Venom Shock. See. I can just move a little further left from where I started. And see if that's the right clutch. So I did move left. Obviously, it was still too fast out. That's going to tell me, again, I need more surface on that ball, or I need something a little bit weaker. Weaker cover-wise would be a primal, but it's going to probably be too fast, knowing that cover and 4 combo compared to a Venom Shock. So let's try this Maxwell Hybrid. Obviously, that's not ideal for what we're going on because they are fresh, but if that's what it's asking of me right now, that's what it's asking. We're going to try this next build by bringing in the same spot I just threw the Venom Shock. But since this is a hybrid, should be a little bit under. We'll see. Okay. So I might have got it a little right, but you can see how much cleaner that cover is, so it shot right a little bit easier. It didn't try to dig like a Venom Shock or a Jack Ghost. So still got up the hill, and I flat tailed. It's okay. I could probably add surface to that. You know, that gives me a little bit rounder motion, a little earlier, so it doesn't slip past it, where I might actually like a 210 or a PBA washout or something like that. So that would be my consensus there. So with that being said, obviously I know that this is a little too far down lane. I need to make sure that it sees a little bit more traction in the mid lane in order to make sure that it doesn't get too far behind the head pin and potentially 210, washout, something like that. So we're going to square up my feet. Just move a little right with my feet. Get closer to the friction. Just roll it. Okay. So even that one was still a little bit behind it. Obviously, it's like light shaker, text them around. Again, that's not ideal. I'd like to see the ball shape up a little sooner, make sure that it's going to get the 1-3 and not hope that it's going to hook enough down lane. So based on that, I've done a ball above and below my benchmark. Benchmark's still probably the right option. I just need a little bit more surface on it in order to get it to slow down. Now, I do think that the ASIN wouldn't be a bad idea on this in order to control the back end motion. So I'm going to look at a Pride Liberty here. Okay, so it is a cleaner cover and it is much faster down lane. Yes, the asymmetry did take over and stood up a little bit harder, but as you can see, it was too quick. So that's why I 3-6-10 there. Also tells me that, you know, my ball is storing too much energy and coming off it too hard, and I need it to bleed a little bit. So with that being said, I think I just got to go back to my Venom Shock. There we go. So that was a much rounder motion, as you can see. Obviously, I did move further left, which made my angles a little bit steeper because I know how much friction there is. I haven't had a ball that's missed the spot down lane yet. Even as I got down to my weakest ball that I have with me, it still picked up down lane and tried to get back to the pocket. So they're hooking quite a bit. With that said, obviously I'm a little further left than I'd like to be. And honestly, on something like this, with how flat they feel and how much friction there is, I could see a urethane ball in play. I could see a Tank Rampage definitely being something that would match up on this until they transition and get a little bit more stretched to where I have a little bit more hold. That hold will allow me to stay closer to the friction, knowing that I have this left and it's not going to overreact like it has so far in this video. So if you don't have a urethane ball that's going to stretch it, you're kind of forced to create hold down lane with angle. So what I mean is you have to be steeper from the front, throwing it left to right if you're a right-hander or right to left as a left-hander, in order to make sure that if you do miss left, the oil that's in the middle of the lane is still helping it push to the right far enough, close to that friction. If you're shallow and you miss left, what's going to happen if they're this flat is that your ball's going to overreact and be way too erratic down lane, and it's going to tell you that you have to be further left. So we're just trying to, take that into consideration and get in the right part of the lane. So I think the last one was really close. So obviously I'm kind of handcuffed with what I have here with me for this instance, but I think based on what I'm seeing right now, I think a lethal would actually be probably the best option. Similar strength to this, a little bit of asymmetry in order to control that back end. It's not going to be so violent and might allow me to not have to feel so steep on the lane because it's much smoother. But in this instance, got our trusty down the shop in the lane. That's what we're looking for. It's a much rounder, more controllable motion. Still went through the pins. It wasn't so violent trying to go towards the 8 so fast down lane. It was very rounded, and that's a good shape for me. So now what I want to think about is, okay, if this is where I'm going to start, and this is the part that I'm going to really beat up on play, what happens when I get full to the left? Is this ball going to be fast enough still? Or am I going to have to throw something that's going to store a little bit more energy and be a little bit more faster response down lane off the impact? So let's first move left with this ball. All right, so like I said, I'm going to move a little bit further left, see if this ball is going to allow me to stay in that zone as I transition. Okay, so I move further left, it's got steeper, and that ball is a little too smooth, slow down lane. So that tells me that as I move left and the lanes progressively get more and more beat up, I'm going to need something cleaner and faster down lane. So that's where maybe that primal rage puts into play. So let's throw the primal rage in the same spot as I just did and see what that does. Okay, so not a bad shape. Obviously got there a lot easier, out down lane for free and came off the friction, but it was a little bit behind the headman. That's what that pusher 7 is telling me. So it will be good later when there's enough friction built in at that spot down lane that I know it's going to come off a cart. But right now there's just a little bit too much oil out there still for that ball. And that's why I got a little bit too far behind the head pin, came back, and basically my head pin went in front of the 7, missed it because of the angle that I was creating by being so far left and not having enough friction to get that ball to slow down and change directions yet. So that's based on that Swisher 7 that I just muffed. We're going to throw something that's similar in strength on the lane. It's obviously just a little bit different because it's a hybrid and a little bit of asymmetry to it. But I think that's a little bit better for me right now because that primal was a little too far down lane and it could definitely miss a spot when there's not enough friction built in yet. So let's throw this Liberty from the same spot. I just Swisher 7 primal. Not my best shot, but obviously you can see that it did a little bit different motion on lane compared to that primal. It sought the mid lane a little bit better, it started to slow down without changing directions too hard, and was able to mix them up and slap the 4 out. So I think if I throw a little bit better shot on this next one, that's going to be a really good shape for me. So no, I could go to my bottom sock, tangents until I get too far left for it, and then it's too slow. Then I should be able to go this side, Liberty. So right there is maybe a little bit miss left on my part. Ow. But what did that leave just tell me? Well, they're still pretty flat down lane. I don't have hold there, my ball still took off and was very violent down lane, and I left it through 6. So I need to make sure that my ball's seeing it a little bit sooner on the lane and being a little bit rounder off of that friction down lane, because it's so prevalent right now that I can 3-6 anytime I miss left, or I get handful and I'm really nice to it at the bottom. So plunging better. That is a much rounder shape, something that I can control. Yes, I have to tweak my hand a little bit, only because of the cardio lane that I'm forced to play based on what's output. So I know that that's still the right ball. So I liked it on the fresh once I got lined up, and then just tried to figure out where I needed to move once I know that they're going to transition. But I can stay in this ball, obviously, because I'm further left about 10 and 5 from where I started. So that's the good 2 zones. And I just had to tweak my hand. So that shape's really good, really controllable. Now let's see if we just tweak our hand with something a little bit quicker again to see if that'll help. So we're gonna go back to the primal, because I know that it was easy to get it across the flap. I want to move just a little bit further left, and then use the same hand that I have with that Red and Chaco's bib. Really good shape there. I like that I was able to be aggressive from further left, know that my ball's still going to get far enough right, and it comes off the friction but in a different way compared to the Beta. You can see that it was much quicker down lane, a little bit more responsive to the friction, which is great because I know that that's what's going to happen as the day goes on and progresses. So this is definitely a ball that I can go to after. Now, let's see what the Thrill Hybrid will do to see how much weaker this is in comparison to that red ball. Am I going to need more friction? Am I going to need to be shallower? This should help us understand those questions here in a second. Same hand, position that I was just in. Main spot is the best. So, much more violent, obviously down lane. But you can see that it got further down lane. It got further to a spot of friction down lane compared to that red ball because it's weaker cover and core cover. But we're still strong enough to get back off the hill. Maybe a little too strong. So, that just tells me I don't need to be as steep. I know that it's going to get over there a little bit easier because it has a less flaring core compared to that pine note. So I might just move my feet back 2 or 3 to the right. Same target on the lane. And see if the oil will help still push it to the right enough. Same hand position, obviously. The light tub was reading the pattern. There it is. That tells me that's too weak. It needs more friction. So I squared them in a little bit more of the oil compared to that red ball, and compared to the last shot that you saw me throw with this Thrill Hybrid. So obviously it needs friction, which is great because I need that after the Primo. When the Primo is just too much, forces me to a zone that I don't want to be in. I could probably just be in this max drill as long as there's enough friction. So I'm at 210. I think it's going to be back to the fry malt. And see if that's a repeatable line. Good right there.